All right, good morning and welcome to the Emerging Digital Threats, Deepfakes, Deception, and Theft panel discussion. My name is Brian Dugan. I'm the CSO at the Virginia Spaceport up at Wallops Island. Rather than me having to memorize everybody's backgrounds and stuff, I'll start at the far end there with Rijul. If you want to introduce yourself and say hi to everybody.
Yeah, my name is Rijul Gupta. I'm the CEO and founder of DeepMedia. I have 18 years of AI development experience, and we work in the OSINT information warfare space.
Hey everybody, great to be here today. Mike Machtinger with the FBI. I'm the Deputy Assistant Director for FBI's Cyber's Intelligence Branch. We do all strategic and tactical intel across nation-state threats as well as cyber criminal threats. And I also run our policy shop, which really covers all of FBI Cyber's engagement with Congress and the White House, as well as other departmental policy issues.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jamie Holcombe, and I'm the former CIO at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. I finished a 6.5-year stint there just in August, and ever since I've been at USAI because we do AI for the U.S. Got to get that branding down,
good
right?
Pitch. Yeah.
Trademarking stuff, right? It was really good. Anyway, one of the biggest things I did at the PTO, and it does not stand for paid time off, it is the Patent and Trademark Office. I actually instituted AI and machine learning way before all this generative AI came out. And then when the generative AI came out, of course, we created our own because of the intelligence community, and we have to keep things very classified as far as patents and trademarks go. Once in, never out. And that is not what's going on in most of your commercial generative AI stuff. So we had to be very careful. We actually run trials and appeals boards as well for both the patents and trademarks. And people would love to get a hold of that information. That's why we're one of the most sought after sites for hacking in the entire US government. So I've got a lot of background in cybersecurity. I'm actually a West Point graduate, first ever of computer science. I don't know if that's good or bad because the Army's always a little behind on things. But anyway, I actually graduated from the Department of Cartography. Think about that. Anyway, even though the Army's behind, we're up now. The best job I ever had, though, I was at the Harris Corporation. I actually was in charge of 3 teams with the FBI. So we were in the white vans. We were collecting data, Team A. Couldn't get out of the van, though. Number 2, we sent it back to the lab. We were the analytical team, Team B. And then Team C, Charlie, they were the expert witnesses that got ahead and put away those white-collar criminals. God darn, I love the mission. It's awesome. So it's all about mission. I can't wait to talk about, AI and how it does our mission better.
All right, so I'll be your moderator today. I've got a bunch of different questions, some general questions, and some stuff we'll dig into things, and then we'll open up to everybody here toward the end. So, Rijul, I'm going to start with you. What are you seeing with the evolution of deepfake technology, and what kind of threats do you anticipate in the future?
I think the biggest evolution that people need to be aware of is the movement from purely identity-based deepfakes, deepfake faces and voices, to whole content deepfakes. You might see fake images or fully fake videos, and I was just telling these guys, a couple of days I saw a deepfake of Tel Aviv airport being bombed, and it looks and feels so realistic, and I think that's something that people really need to understand. We've moved into the world where full content, full image, full video could totally be fake, and that's pretty new.
Mike?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of other things in AI, what we're seeing is the rapid development of deepfakes turning from kind of a toy that someone might mess around with, but didn't pose any serious threat to anybody, to a tool or even a weapon. And one of the common things that we see that AI enables sort of across the board, and I think deepfakes are no exception to this, is at the lower end of the skill set and resource level, it can really enhance capabilities for sort of people who are novices, right? And across the board, again with AI, if you look at developing malware, for instance, you can see that someone who's not a very good developer all of a sudden can come up with a pretty decent, pretty decent shot at malware that can actually do some damage. And I think, the same thing on the deepfake front, that it's becoming so accessible now that someone who really has no technical expertise is going to be able and is able to use this technology to sort of wreak havoc. Of course, there's a positive side to that too, right? That we can all use tools that can serve for the betterment of society. One of the other things I think that we've seen that has been concerning is the ability to sort of create things in real time, right? So it's not just a static picture or a video that gets posted to the internet, but you can go and do a job interview for like a work from home position, and you can appear as someone completely different from who you are. And we've seen some nefarious actors use that kind of technology already in a way that is, creating massive amounts of fraud. We had, so one of my duties is to oversee the Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3, which is really where we tell the American public and others to go to report incidents of, either cyber crime or what we call cyber-enabled crime. And in 2025, we had 22,000 reports of AI-enabled fraud, and certainly, we're going to see an explosion in that number, I think, in 26 and 27 and beyond, and huge financial impacts there by actors that aren't necessarily as sophisticated as you would think.
Jamie, I've got one since you worked in the patent office. What should policymakers be doing? What should their approach be toward regulating deepfakes while not stifling innovation in the private sector?
Great question, because it's on the tip of every congressman's tongue. The fact of the matter is, patent law has evolved to the point where you've got to really be careful about what you're patenting and what you're not. It's very difficult, obviously, for people who don't know what these new, unique, and novel ideas come up. Can you imagine if a patent comes up for a deepfake? Well, I don't think it would come up that way, but it comes out in other angles. So then, do you have a moral duty to either patent it or not patent it? So we're taking the scientific method and trying to ensure that we are patenting the actual algorithm, whether it's to be used, as was discussed, for good or bad, right? The dual-edged sword. So that's what they're grappling with right now. And just like Congress is normally, they can't decide anything. So it's left up to your regulators and the people within the patent office to pass, to judge the statutes and then pass accordingly. That Trials and Appeals Board is really tough, because heretofore, all the high-tech companies have been able to take advantage of it, and pretty much through lawfare, through the ability to spend more than the little guy, they've been able to overcome a lot of the new innovations. But there's a new director in charge right now, and he is representing the little guy. And so I really like that fact that he's trying to get all this innovation out there. And so then it becomes a moral duty about how you use that innovation. So in essence, we all have to be more educated about what's going on. And I do think there's a huge cultural divide in America where, the older generations are just like, it's just a tool, who cares? The younger generations totally understand how to use it. But we have to figure out the policy, and then we have to get our Congress people to actually pass statutes that are effective for innovation and effective keeping our security. It's really difficult. It's a balance.
There's a lot of gray area too, I'm sure. Rijul, what do you think about that from the private sector, and especially like the moral duty? Is that out there?
No, it's not. I do think it's important to understand that there's a difference between the technology and the application, and that regulating the technology is going to be very difficult, and quite frankly, it's going to put America behind in the AI arms race. But regulating the application of this technology is really critical. I kind of think of it like it's not illegal to own a knife. It is illegal to use that knife to hurt somebody. It should not be illegal to own, operate, or build AI technologies. It should be regulated, if not illegal and enforced, to use that to disrupt democracies, to hurt people, to scam people, to spread disinformation. And I think that is something that Europe, through the Digital Services Act, through the EU AI Online Act, has done a really good job at least trying to regulate. And in the United States, we should do a better job of making sure this technology is used for the betterment of all society. Because I think if we leave it up to the moral decisions, it's going to take a long time for people to catch up.
Great. Hey, Mike, I know in the FBI, we're always trying to educate the public because you can't always investigate everything. And so a lot of ways you help, and as we were talking to the secretary before, enable the citizenry to kind of know what to do. How do we best prepare the common person to spot, to detect deep fakes so they can defend themselves from deep fakes?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think really gets to the heart of, I mentioned the Internet Crime Complaint Center. I mean, we're getting hundreds of thousands of reports a year, right? And not only do we not have the capability to investigate all of those reports, but in some cases, we don't even have the capability to have, good bilateral communications with the victims, right? So on an individual basis, preparing yourself, and on an organizational basis, super important. So how do we teach people to spot fakes? Like, unfortunately, I think, especially as the technology gets better, people aren't going to always be able to spot fakes, and we're not going to be able to sort of identify what is real and what is not real on our way out of it. So, just like we look on the IT side at zero trust, I think now with media, given the prevalence of synthetic media, we've got to come from a standpoint of it's not real until we prove that it is real, right? And I know that's the way that a lot of the industry is going and law enforcement is going, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But from an individual level, I think verifying something out of band, right? Your CEO calls you, it looks like his office, it looks like him or her, the voice is right, and they're asking you to transfer money. Is it a good idea to transfer that money right away? No. Like, use a known contact method outside of the one that you are being contacted with to verify. So out-of-band communications, we're seeing a lot of people fail at this, right? There's have been some prevalent vishing campaigns, which is, voice messages of figures who may be prominent government figures that are being used to defraud people out of money or push them to encrypted messaging applications where they are later defrauded out of money. And when you look at the technology now, I think it's like under 10 seconds of a voice clip can allow voice cloning, right? So when you have individuals that are out there in public and they're contacting you, don't expect that it's a real contact, right? And then from an organization, and I guess also be wary of what they're requesting and the urgency of the request. One of the big tip-offs, I think, for individuals is, get a call. I need you to transfer X amount of money. I need you to do it right now. You can't call me back. Like, this has to happen immediately. That's a huge red flag, right? Organizationally, again, I don't think we're gonna, people are going to be tricked by synthetic media, and we just have to accept that as a fact. So if they're defeating our ability to discern what is real or not, what we can't let them defeat is the procedures that we have for our workforces, especially surrounding sensitive actions, right? Whether that's, increased use of multi-factor authentication for sensitive actions, those out-of-band confirmations. It has to be inside a business workflow or an organizational workflow and not count on an individual to determine whether something's synthetic or not. Training and exposing employees and other individuals to the technology. They should know that it is capable for someone to clone their CEO and appear to be in their office and ask them to do something, because if they know that that is possible, then they're less likely to immediately acquiesce to sort of requests like that. And then I'd say certainly obtaining detection tools, like using AI to sort of fight AI, so to speak, is definitely something that's also important. But I think our advice is there has to be a process, there has to be a plan, and ideally that plan has to be in place before there's some sort of crisis event that may cost you or an organization a lot of money or time or other resources.
And I just wanted to add maybe a few points of clarification there. I think within an organization, that is all really good advice. These are high-quality synthetic media attacks. Detectors kind of work, kind of don't, depends on the application, depends on how good this model is. A lot of cryptographic encryption will help a lot. A lot of training will help, and I think, these are one-to-one attacks, right? A lot of other attacks also happen in OSINT online sources, on social media. Those are a lot harder to defend against because once it's out there, it's out there. Once it's gone viral, it's gone viral. So those need to be responded to almost before they go viral, which kind of can be quite difficult, but there are solutions for that. Additionally, I think the movement from trust but verify, which is what we've had in the past, to verify then trust, which I think is what Mike is suggesting. I think within an organization, that is really excellent advice. However, it has some externalities on the large societal scale. There's a video going around the past couple of days of Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. People are claiming this is fake. It's not fake. We ran it through our detectors. I looked at it. It's real. Everyone is claiming this thing is fake. How do you prove it's real? If you just assume it's fake to begin with, how can you actually prove something is real? I don't really know if we as a society have good mechanisms for that yet. And so I think that ideally we can get to a place where we can monitor and, quite frankly, police online social communities, removing disinformation, so when someone goes to these platforms, they aren't flooded with deepfakes, with disinformation, with fake news, with content that is just lying about the world. I hope we get to that place. I mean, we'll see. Right?
Well, you started answering the question that I was going to ask you, so I appreciate you kind of doing the clarification. But for those of us that are not tech savvy, you mentioned QR detectors. We're all accustomed to having virus protection on our computers or laptops. It's built in now into systems and cloud systems. Are there deep fake tools out there that the average person can get their hands on?
So there are tools. At DeepMedia, we build tools. They're available on our website for free. There are other companies out there with tooling. I think that represents opportunities for people to educate themselves, but the issues with these tools is they're not perfect, right? I think people are used to the binary. This is either real or fake. And with these detection tools, it gives you a probability score. And interpreting those probability scores itself, I mean, you need a mathematical, at least some level of math education to understand what a type 1 and type 2 error is. And so I'm concerned that the over-reliance on these detection tools again, we're talking about the average social media user, right? The people in this room, I think, can understand how to use these tools to protect themselves. But the average social media user, I'm afraid, is not going to be able to do that. So I personally think that there is an onus on the social media companies to find and remove this content in order to help keep their users, but also all of us sitting in this room as Americans safe.
And that's a great lead-in, because I think, Jamie, you and I talked about this earlier. Social media companies are decreasing their due diligence teams. Is there an onus, you talked about moral duty, is there an onus on social media teams to kind of own, again, potential deep fakes that are sending out erroneous messages?
If you're asking my opinion and judgment, of course there is. The only way capitalism works is through a moral society. If everything goes to hell and everybody's just looking out for themselves, it's survival of the fittest. And at that point, we don't have a society that's not civilized. That's my personal opinion. Now, what about the culture of these social media companies? The point is that we have to inculcate a culture such that morality is part of the, what is your job? Is it just to have the best value for the shareholder, right? Or are you actually providing a service to the community, the goodness involved with that, and is that part of your mission? So of course that was drilled into me at the academy, right? And that's just the way it is. So how do you do that in a cyber secure way? The out of band is awesome. I love that. You change a channel, you do something different, make sure it's through another route to verify, and then don't do the on-off, like the yes or no. I mean, it's not binary. You have to have a preponderance of evidence. And so because of that, I think people do need to get educated. It's a great time to be a CISO because now when you go through your annual training, you actually can have some stuff that's really fun. There's a lot of cartoons out there that go through all the different ways that you could be faked. And you can actually gamify it, which is awesome. When you gamify things for people, and that's what social media does, right? It gamifies the whole thing about information sharing. So why don't we do that with cybersecurity? Gamify it such that, you know, you reframe it. Oh, that's another one. So Scott Adams, God bless him, he just passed away. He wrote a book called Reframe Your Brain. If you haven't read it, it's awesome. But you take things that seem, you know, like for example, if somebody drinks too much, one of the things he said was, you know, think that alcohol is a neurotoxin and reframe it such that, wait a minute, you're putting poison in your body. And through that, you can think about the fact that maybe I shouldn't be doing this that much. And it helped a lot of people not drink. So if you reframe the brain around the whole social media and say, wait a second, you know, am I really depending, am I just believing this without having any preponderance of evidence or a confidence level such that I really do believe it's true or not? That's what we need to get to.
And maybe these social media companies need to reframe on their side, right? It's like, they want to make the most money for their shareholders. They're a corporation. But, I mean, we're getting to a place where TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube is full of AI slop. I don't know how much you all use those platforms. I use them a lot. It's not a good habit. But they are not fun. Like, I'm using them less now, and that's bad for their bottom line. So I think maybe helping these social media companies understand, whether it's through regulation, whether it's through their own moral backbone, that they are hurting people and hurting their bottom line, could help get us to a place where we have a healthier society.
Well, you mentioned the public and preponderance of evidence. I'm curious if you guys think, if anybody has comment, and again, this is more on the opinion side, but is the public in a position to basically be weighing preponderances of evidence for everything that they ingest? I mean, are we no longer able to trust what we're seeing anymore, and now we have to have a case built of whether or not it's believable or not?
Yes.
I'm just afraid that that is a requirement and nobody's going to do that. And that's like really frightening.
I think it's too the danger that we risk, that I think is already happening, is just an erosion of trust, right? It is about, you see something and discern that it's synthetic media, you know, but it's also, as you mentioned, about you see something real and you can't convince anyone that it's real anymore. So how do you get the reality out and sort of separate it from the synthetic?
We might see journalism, a resurgence of journalism finally come back. I mean, that's what journalism was supposed to do, right, in the original part of society, and kind of went by the wayside with social media. But now I think that's like really important. We have trusted journalists who weigh evidence and give us real truth.
So Mike, I'll bring it back to law enforcement for you here. So in your perspective in law enforcement, how do you see agencies adapting to identify and respond to deepfake threats?
Yeah, so first I think it's important to say that there's no doubt in my mind that the technology is outpacing the adaptation. There has been a lot of good work that's been done forensically, looking at digital forensics and proving provenance. Like, that is a field that is starting to take off, but it's not taking off as fast as the ability to produce the synthetic media is taking off, for sure. From a law side, you've got like the take it down legislation. Like there are some activities, especially on the like child sexual material front and sexual abuse of material front, that there has been some success on I guess from a legal standpoint. But I think this is a huge challenge, right? Like the dollar figures just reported of AI-enabled fraud, over $1 billion. That's going to continue to skyrocket. And I think the difficulty is law enforcement's in a position where we need to work with partners to understand the technology and to educate potential victims. but we're kind of doing both at the same time, right? It's building the airplane while we're flying it. So we're trying to warn people and help them discern the real from the fake and see how criminals are using this and circumvent them. But we're still trying to understand it, and as we understand it, the capability sets grow so quickly. I mean, even something like Sora, right? If you mess around with Sora when it first came out, compared to even today, like there's a pretty big difference, and it's only been a matter of months, I think, right? So the speed at which these tools are growing is certainly outpacing our adaptations, and I think this is certainly a high stakes issue, and in any high stakes law enforcement issue, I think the key that I always come back to is collaboration, right? Collaboration with industry, collaboration across law enforcement, collaboration with our foreign partners, just working together as a network to try to stop these threats before they continue to manifest, or at least to stay abreast of the pace of them as they continue to manifest.
And Mike, not to put you on the spot, so in my past, I worked crimes against children, and Rijul, to your point, using the knife. I understand the legal successes you're talking about. We can actually charge somebody that don't victimize an actual child, but they're producing child pornography through deepfakes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I think obviously that is a good thing. The law surrounding how we go after individuals who are committing crimes using synthetic media is a complex and difficult environment, but that is absolutely correct.
Good. So, Jamie, for you, what are some of the concerns, the biggest threats we're starting to see where deepfakes are involved in national security issues?
So, I believe that our biggest threat, of course, our biggest adversary does not respect the intellectual property that's being held. And it's a cultural thing. A lot of times, if you're not introduced to property rights and having intellectual property rights, you just believe that an idea is what it might be and it can be shared all over. Now, supposedly the Chinese government is advocating for intellectual property. They do see it they give us lip service, but then they try and go out, and we know that they steal a lot of the intellectual property from around the world. So hopefully through diplomacy, we can somehow thwart this idea that, it's not your idea, it's mine, or I don't care, I'll just use it. Mm-hmm. There's been so much theft of intellectual property within China. And then there's a lot of new innovative entrepreneurs who are lured into giving NDAs and doing pilots, and then all of a sudden that intellectual property shows up 2 or 3 years later in the Chinese economy and on the global economy. So yeah, our biggest threat is China and their lack of respect for intellectual property.
Mike, where are you guys seeing the deepfake issue popping up on the national security front?
Yeah, so I think so far the biggest thing on the national security front, you all may have heard of efforts by North Korea to seed IT workers into American companies, Fortune 500 companies, sometimes even the government. And what they do is predominantly work as IT staff through sort of witting or unwitting individuals here in the United States that set up what we call laptop farms. It could be 100 laptops set up in an apartment, and the North Korean workers will remote into those laptops and use them to obtain and have jobs at American companies. And the primary purpose for this is to fund the North Korean regime's efforts, so their nuclear program, their ballistic missile program. A lot of that money is coming from these remote IT workers who have infiltrated almost every Fortune 500 company at one point or another in the United States, have certainly tried to infiltrate the US government. And the way that they're using deepfakes, and I hinted at it earlier, is if you're having an interview or a conversation with an employee, and a 40-year-old North Korean man can turn himself into a 30-year-old American woman synthetically in a way that is believable, that is obviously a huge issue in these companies identifying these individuals and removing them from access. And again, in addition to the risk that these workers place on our country just by raising, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding that goes to a nation state that is certainly an enemy of ours and our allies, they're also getting placement and access inside the defense industrial base, in a position to steal intellectual property, as you mentioned, from American companies. And this access is not lost on them, right? So I think all of this, to some extent, is being enabled by deepfakes, and it's being made more and more effective than it ever has been in the past by the ability to do it in real time in a way that is nearly indiscernible from reality.
Rijul, I got a big question for you. Where's this all going in the next 5 years?
Well, I think there's one of two places. In the next 5 years, I think we're either going to look back at this moment and realize that this is the moment where things started to get better, where we started partnering, where we started building technology and solutions and integrating them. And I hate to say this, or the other option is that none of that happens and this all goes away. That society kind of collapses. And I don't mean to be a doomer. I don't really believe that. I don't think that's where we're going to end up. I think we're going to get to a place. But I mean, if we look at just what we do, right? And I think so much of modern society and modern Western, hegemony anyway, is due to America's information dominance. Our ability to understand, look at, analyze, and use information at scale. And what generative AI, synthetic media, and deepfakes fundamentally represent is mud in the water. Is in a world where we cannot trust our own eyes and ears, can we still operate like we do in Iran? Can we operate like we do in the United States domestically when we can't trust these sources? I think that is what's going to be the biggest challenge to overcome. There are solutions. It's partnership between government stakeholders, between social media companies, between AI companies, between militaries. It means getting in the room and finding solutions, and I believe with my entire being that we're going to do that. Because if we don't, then I think we can't make it.
Well, I'll follow up on that, Jimmy, before I go to you, because it was, I guess, maybe my experience. So the FBI worked with social media companies when we knew that there was a foreign actor that was putting something out on social media, and we got crucified. And now social media has nothing to do with the government. Their due diligence is downsizing. How do we get that back? How do we get that collaboration back?
I think it's putting pressure on these companies. I think it is showing the world that these companies are directly hosting child pornography. They are directly hosting terrorism recruitment videos. They are directly hosting disinformation that is going to crash stock prices, that is going to disrupt global democracies. I think it's not easy, but I think with new modern technologies, with AI, people are using AI to create bot farms to disrupt organizations. What we've done at DeepMedia is create a bot farm to get radicalized by these social media algorithms so we understand what they're actually doing to their users, right? There are solutions to understand what's happening on the inside of these algorithms. I think the key is going to be getting those answers to the public, to put pressure on the companies to do something about it.
Great. So Jamie, to follow up, because we talked about this, and we're getting into more of the AI stuff, but you talked about AI as coding itself, and is it getting away from us?
Well, just like the nuclear age, I mean, we did a lot of research and development into that. So I don't think we should be afraid of it and it getting away from us. What we have to do is understand the pros and cons and harness that to the best of our abilities. So do you remember there was this Broadway show called The Radium Girls? I don't know if you remember it, but they used to take very fine tip paint brushes and then they painted the dials of watches, and the radioactivity would glow in the dark. It was really cool, right? The only problem was they were licking the paintbrushes to get the and they died, obviously, you know, that it's just the radioactivity. So if you don't know and you do something you don't know, that's a guardrail that should have been in there. It's in there now, obviously, but that's what we have to look for in all of our AI generation, you know. Right now, we have the ability, if you haven't used Replit or Cursor or Lovable or our product, Genesis, you can vibe code out there and you can create an application and let AI actually generate all the code within 20, 30 minutes. In fact, I've done it myself. I created the old video game Pong within 20 minutes and I had it operating in a FedRAMP high secure environment. It was amazing. It was awesome. But if you can do that right now with that vibe coding, then the application space is no longer that valuable, because I'll create an app today, use it, not like it, change it tomorrow, create a new app. And so what's really valuable is the data that I'm changing. And so the industry, I believe, is going to shift away from applications as valuable into more data, the infrastructure that data's on, and how that data is actually handled, manipulated, and so forth. So I think we are going to see a sea change because artificial intelligence gets us there quicker. Might not be better, might be just as good as, or maybe a little less, but it gets us there a lot quicker.
Mike, speaking of AI, how is AI changing social engineering and fraud?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's making it much worse, right? And I think anyone who has gotten a phishing email over the last few years has seen how much better that they've gotten, right? It can, the language is better, it can allow targeting against individuals better, and really the scale that it can bring to fraudulent actors. I mean, it can write, you know, targeted phishing emails to thousands of people in probably a matter of seconds, right? Which is a huge improvement of what we've seen before. And really, you know, it comes down to the machine being better at tricking people, which again gets back to the need to modify our processes, because we're really not going to be able to figure out, you know, what's real or what's fake. The messages are going to look genuine. They're going to be worded in a way that makes sense. The voice messages are going to sound familiar to us. The videos are going to have, you know, the right locations and the right people telling us to do things. So it's certainly made, you know, again, a novice fraudster into a much higher level fraudster, and has allowed, you know, the higher level fraudsters sort of an economy of scale that we could have never imagined before, right? But like, there's benefits to that, at least to the technology as well, because the algorithms that our, you know, email services, for example, use to filter out those phishing emails have also gotten a whole lot better, right? So if there's a silver lining there, beyond processes, I think it's the, you know, the very technology that is creating the enhanced threat is really our best hope at sort of filtering through and protecting us from it. And I think that's true really across more than just kind of cyber-enabled crime and fraud, but, you know, cyber intrusions and you know, automated attacks that we're starting to see where AI is being used through the entire sort of chain of a cyber attack to enable it, but it's also being used to analyze logs and find anomalies that, you know, human cybersecurity analysts would either never find or would take so long for them to find that, you know, the actor's persistence would be in place for years and years. So no doubt that it's enhancing the capabilities of, you know, both criminals and nation state actors, but also certainly on the bright side, enhancing all of our capabilities exponentially as well.
Great. Rijul, can you kind of further on how AI is strengthening cybersecurity? Because I'm trying to wrap up on some optimistic versions here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think just like Mike said, right, the bad guys are using these tools, but we are kind of using the reverse of those tools to fight them, right? The way that deepfake detectors work is they use the exact same AI models, but I mean, almost literally almost like inside out, rather. I wouldn't say in reverse, but like a mirror image of those models to be able to detect them. So as those models get better, yes, it's a cat and mouse game, but pretty quickly you can adapt. Additionally, I think that there are more exciting defensive applications as well. I think that, again, the space I live in is an OSINT. It is on social media, as well as dating apps and gaming and messengers, right? The places where people congregate, online communities, and message. And AI now has the ability to scan and analyze massive amounts of content, like thousands or 10,000 times more than we could before. And the insights we are able to deliver are pretty unique. I mean, I think, it's still early days, but the ability for like our AI bot army to go in and get invited to Discord channels and then like analyze those messages and then find out, hey, these people are getting radicalized. Maybe we need to like show somewhat about this. Like, we couldn't do that a year ago, right? And so I think that there are new threats, but there are also old threats that AI is helping us deal with.
Yeah, certainly, man. I know I'm more on the physical security side at the Spaceport, but with 100 TV screens showing all the different areas that we have to kind of keep an eye on, we now have AI that can actually help the security workforce kind of zoom in on what camera we want to watch now versus having that human eye scan all those cameras. So Jamie, real quick, as we try to get a couple of positive things here, what are some of the positive applications of deepfakes or synthetic media technology that you think we should focus on in our society?
Well, I don't think any deep fakes are good, right? That's not the point. But we do have the ability now to fight fire with fire. And that actually has a great connotation in the head, because philosophically, if we think of this new frontier, and they call it a lot of things frontier, right? But the Wild West, then what we have to do is cordon off those areas and make some places safe and make other places just free. You can go, buyer beware, as they say. But in that case too, FedRAMP High and those types of organizations, although they are bureaucratic and it's hell to get through, maybe there's another faster way to do that, and that's, you should look to the commercialization. Right now, I think there's a big problem in corporate America. You look at what just happened with Stryker, and if you didn't know, Stryker got hit by Iran, and that's because we started a war with Iran. So now, why was Stryker hit? What happened? And it's not so much that they didn't take down a lot. They're recovering fine. But corporate America looks at it as a risk mitigation instead of an existential threat. Whereas the military or intelligence, we look at it for what it is. It could kill us. And so corporate America needs to take that type of attitude and that philosophy. That's why I was saying, you have to have the right attitude when you go into it. It's all about the cultural mindset. And if you know where you are in the Wild West, fight it that way. Corporate America just doesn't realize how vulnerable they truly are, and they need to get it down. And we can do that. We can actually educate and give those tools that are needed. They're not that expensive. They don't need to be NSA qualified. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you follow the basic cybersecurity rules, and you'll be okay.
So, Rijul, Mike, again, is there positive applications of deepfakes or synthetic media that you can think of or you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we have a tendency to look at this from the cybersecurity angle, and certainly in the FBI from how are criminals using these tools and how can we use them to defeat the criminals. But the synthetic media, I mean, the things that it can do are pretty amazing. I saw a development of the capability to do sort of real-time translation of a speech into American Sign Language, right, and video in real time. That's absolutely incredible and will certainly be, a valuable tool for many Americans. I think another example is, we talked about voice cloning being such an easy thing to do with less than 10 seconds. Well, that could be used for fraud, sure, but it could also be used to allow, an ALS patient to speak through a machine in their own voice to their family. I'm sure there's a million other examples like that, and I myself am guilty of looking at these technologies and thinking, how are the bad guys going to use them to get at us? But the truth is, these are amazing technologies. They're enabling new and exciting things to be done every day. Those are only a couple of them, but by and large, as a society, just as we have the risk of having massive trust issues with these deep fakes, the synthetic media capabilities also allow a lot of positive things that can advance society.
And I agree. I think that synthetic media has many wonderful applications, everything from translation to helping disenfranchised or otherwise handicapped people contribute to society. I think it's a harder question to answer if deepfakes have any positive examples. I've been thinking about it. So if we define deepfakes as potentially, maybe we have a broader definition, but synthetic media of people that don't really exist, I do think there could actually be some positive applications. One could be more easy to consume information sharing. If I'm reading a report from some government stakeholder, I kind of glaze over it, not gonna lie, a little bit. I think a lot of us do here. But hearing that report, or maybe seeing someone who I might enjoy looking at, read that report to me, could really help me pay more attention. Maybe I'm just, watching too much social media and have a lower attention span than I need to. But there are applications like that, right? I think additionally, there can be information sharing, the ability to take content from one language or one culture and spread it into another to kind of help. One of the things that I was taught, won the Cold War, was obviously Ronald Reagan, but also Hollywood, right? Are the export of American culture. And so the ability to do that at scale, I think, is a really interesting application. And then finally, I think recruitment. I think we have a recruitment problem in the United States Armed Forces. And I think using synthetic media, labeled as synthetic media, I want to make this clear, none of this is supposed to be manipulative in any way, but having the ability to actually see and hear from people with their permission, like a deep fake of their president or a deep fake of a celebrity, again, with their explicit permission, I think could do a lot to aid things like recruitment or just general, I think, just general patriotism in America, I think could help a lot. Those are just some ideas I had.
Great, thank you. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes. I wanted to open up to the floor if you had any questions about these gentlemen's AI and deepfake expertise. So if you can grab a mic, we'll be more happy to answer a question. Sure.
Good morning. Thanks a lot. You guys really opened up a lot of doors for us to look into. And one of the things that what I'm accumulating over time and aware is the ability to understand awareness as opposed to paranoia. The heightened awareness, of just like what was used yesterday, situational awareness, just the word awareness, and try to replace that with paranoia. Because with awareness, you have calm. You can assess the situation and you can say, hey, that's not right. But in paranoia, oh, that's wrong. We got to run. So where can we be in a way is like, I work for a electric cooperative. Where can we be finding some training material to give to our coworkers to say, hey, don't be paranoid about something. The old phrase, if you see it, report it. Just like in the phishing emails and that's the front lines right there, are the phishing emails. That's what took Colonial Pipeline down. Some poor soul clicked on the wrong email, and so, I can just visualize that panic in that room. What kind of training can we give to our coworkers from the government that would help them understand, hey, be aware of something, don't be paranoid about it? Because a lot of times in paranoia, I'll just delete that email. It's a lot easier to delete it. In my culture, what I try to emphasize is don't just delete it, report it. Because there are tools that I've given my coworkers that they can use to report a phishing, what they think is a phishing email. And then I can go ahead and investigate it, throw it in the sandbox and check it out. So, and then what I do is I commend them for them. I pat them on the back, good job, gold star. But if they inadvertently click on one of my campaign phishing emails, I don't throw them under the bus. I don't shame them, you know. I just, okay, here's what we got here, you know, don't have a panic mode. But what kind of training can we get from the FBI or the government that would help me, help my coworkers to kind of stay in front of all this?
Do you guys know of any either government or private sector training that's out there about deepfake AI awareness at all?
Yes. Yeah. If you look under DHS, Department of Homeland Security, CISA, the Cyber Infrastructure and Security Agency, they have a whole series of training videos and training materials that you can use for an enterprise. Yep. Yep. I think that's a good place to start. And there's a whole industry out there. I think it's like $100 million industry for training on this stuff. So you can actually buy that too. There's a number of companies. Yeah, exactly.
So CISA is a great resource, one of our closest partners in cybersecurity. One other thing that I would recommend, and this is not specific to deepfakes, but we're trying to run a campaign now just to give people more of a general awareness of cybersecurity and sort of easily implementable principles that they can use to protect themselves from, you know, cyber-enabled crime, cyber intrusions, including, you know, fraud perpetrated by deepfakes. And the way to access that, it's called Operation Winter Shield, and it's fbi.gov/Winter Shield. And that talks about a lot of sort of the need to use multi-factor authentication and out-of-band communications, and, you know, a lot of things that'll protect across the spectrum from specifically deepfakes and other AI-enabled attacks to any other type of computer intrusion. So that's one that I would look at as well.
Rijul, do you have any?
I would recommend those as well. We have some resources on our website at DeepMedia.ai. Quite frankly, we pulled from the DHS and FBI to inform ours, so I would recommend theirs.
One of the things I want to make sure that in the training it's done, in the culture of enterprise, like corporate America and others, I've seen it in civilian agencies too, what happens is, you know, the CISO or the security guy, you know, he's the one responsible for all that. And the first thing in training you should get to is, just like quality or safety, security is everybody's problem. And everybody has to be, you know, because the weakest link is the person. So in your training, you have to get that across. And I say that too because when you talked about paranoia, it's because of fear. You don't know what's going to happen. And how do you attack fear? You educate people, you know, you make sure that they're comfortable with whatever it is. I mean, you can still be fearful of something you don't know, but go for it. Learn, understand it. Don't be afraid.
And I know someone else had a question, but this is a village. Is there anybody else here that knows of any type of training out there about awareness regarding deepfake or AI technology?
So, Chris Church from Leidos. I actually have the next question, but I can answer this. If anybody in the room isn't a part of the FBI's DSAC program, Domestic Security Alliance Council, right? There's the National Defense Information Sharing Alliance Council. These are industry collaborative groups that get together. We're a part of the Insider Threat Working Group, constantly sharing training, sharing awareness, sharing you know, PowerPoints that you can give to your coworkers that are given by government sources or have been privately developed, and that's a great resource I would recommend as well.
Thank you, sir. Before we go back to you, anybody else that have any other trainings available? All right, sir.
So, again, Chris Church, I'm a retired OSI agent, so I'm going to ask a tough question to primarily to Mike, but from a bureaucratic standpoint, right? We talked about speed of threat. We talked about the pace of play. I mean, sir, you mentioned how AI is going to be changed in the next 6 to 8 months, and we have to keep ahead of it. Industry's doing, I can tell you, at least in my perspective, primarily thinking about the DPRK threat, but broadly. Crazy awareness as much as you can, because corporations are focused on cost. If you're a security in a private industry, you're overhead. You're not making any money for your company. And that's a constant pressure on us. But we're doing what we can to argue that. What is the government doing to get selectors out to private industry quicker? As a retired agent, I know that's tough question from an OPSEC perspective. But if you got a bad IP, if you got a bad email, if you got bad anything, these information sharing groups I mentioned earlier are good for pumping that out, but usually it's months after the fact, and that companies may have already been burned by that threat.
So that's a great question, and it is a hard question, just as you promised. So that's definitely a priority for us. We recognize that we're not getting stuff out fast enough, right? By the time a CSA comes out, we've heard that from industry, right? Like we knew this 2 months ago. And one of the priorities we have within Cyber Division for the fiscal year is to begin sharing at machine speed, right? So we're revamping FBI.gov/cyber to focus more on information sharing. And then we're looking at options of how can we share the indicators of compromise that we have with industry in a way that is easily ingestible, right? And sort of as close to real time as possible. I don't know that we'll get to the same point that some of the cybersecurity firms out in industry are, but certainly reducing, even if we're going to reduce 6 months down to 3 weeks, right? That's going to be hugely beneficial. So all I can say is I can assure you that we have recognized that and are making a concerted effort to increase the velocity of getting those IOCs out to you.
So there's someone over here.
Good morning. I was going to ask this question yesterday, but I feel like this panel, I'd just like to, it's a very general question. Brian, I'm more of a physical security investigation side of the house, but I have counterparts, Meta, Google, and I just want to ask the AI race. It's my understanding it's a winner-take-all mentality, China, et cetera. Where's the finish line? How do we know who wins? How do we know when someone wins? Very general question. I'm just curious your perspective on it.
I personally don't think it's going to be a winner-take-all situation. I think there's going to be a few winners. Like I think Anthropic's making real headways on several specific enterprise applications. I think ChatGPT and OpenAI have a real strong foothold in the consumer side. I think from an international perspective, there are serious concerns, especially because, I mean, we all know that China has a habit of stealing IP, right? You have new models like CDance, Quen, those coming out. I think that, again, just to answer that part, I don't think it's going to be winner take all. And then I think when we think of where does it end, I don't think it's going to have an end, right? Did cloud have an end? Like there's still innovations happening on cloud compute. There are new startups coming out that are trying to dethrone AWS and GCP. They might not do it, but they're trying. So I don't think that there's going to be necessarily an end state to AI. I could be wrong.
I totally agree. There's no end state. It all depends upon what you consider the win, right? And I think for the most part, American capitalism will consider the win as who's got the most money. Because that's really what the measure is, right? However, when you talk about capability and so forth, as I was saying before, compute and the infrastructure is just an expense. Storing, having bandwidth, and having processing. That's the basics of compute. That's the basics of cloud. So who's winning there? No, it'll be total competition. And it's so much of a competition that right now it's almost becoming a commodity. Now, you do have to have a huge investment to get there, but that's the overcoming of the gap in the beginning. What I believe is going to happen with AI, of course, is the fact that data becomes the ultimate value. Everything else is just going to become commodity. So it's whatever data you have and how you produce or create. Everybody talks about entertainment and the creation of content as the big deal. It's not distribution. There's many distribution channels. And that's just like cloud compute. So when you look at it, the data and how you create the data, how you secure it, how you protect it, how you let people get to it, how they can change it, that is the monetization panacea. That is where that's where AI will win or not. How it can hit our data and distribute it and make it valuable. You know, we were talking about deep fakes and how you express the broad part of, you know, what it is. Well, entertainment is a huge one where, you know, the industry, the actors and actresses are truly worried about their images and likenesses and voices being used in the future. I mean, if you haven't watched Black Mirror, it's a really good one. It's a UK sci-fi on Netflix, and I encourage you guys to look at it. It's a little dystopian, but at the same time, there was this one where they were talking about Netflix, and it was fascinating how it was like 6 layers deep. I don't want to destroy the movie for you, but in the fact that they were using AI to actually generate entertainment content for everyone, and that's the way it was. And so that it might be a good use of deepfake. But again, it's that content creation, it's the data that's really valuable. And the monetization of that data is where AI will end up.
It's not an answer for you, but I was just at a conference where we were talking about it, and I'm a knuckle dragger when it comes to cyber, but they talk about AGI and becoming aware, but that goalpost keeps on getting moved. They were talking 18 months, and then 6 months later, like, well, it'll be 2 years. So to like what Stan was talking about, when versus if, I don't know which one it's gonna be. But yeah, it's definitely interesting times. Any other questions? Sir.
It's more of a kind of like a comment on this gentleman's question is, instead of it being a race, why can't it just be a collaboration? You know, it seems to me like you have one side trying to race to the end, which is there is no end. You have another side doing the same race. I'm the ultimate optimist. You know, I'd like to see a collaboration. That way we can pool all our data together. You know, that's how I look at it is, yeah, hey, we got to be on the defensive side, but eventually that defense should just, you know, just say, hey, let's just get along. Do you ever see it that way?
I think that on the defensive side, there should be collaboration. And I think, you know, multi-stakeholder groups all working towards the greater good, that works as an economic model when there are negative externalities of things like deepfakes, right? Like deepfakes could crash the market and that hurts everybody. So it's in everybody's best interest to solve that. On the offensive side, and by offensive I mean just like making a better AI than your competitor, I think I mean, competition breeds innovation, right? So we want Anthropic to compete with OpenAI, to compete with Google, to compete with Meta. I think as long as there's fair and equitable competition, that drives better outcomes. There does become problems when there's unfair competition, when people steal IP, when you have major government cash injections into something, which you can then lower the price and then drive other people out of the market unfairly. I think that is where we can actually have some industry collaboration within the West to help prevent that unfair competition. That's how I see it.
I think we got time for one more question. If anybody has one final one. Sure.
I'm going to get a little bit dystopian. For me, I'm 48. I worry about the young. I look at AI as protecting, you know, our personal information success, our national security. I know it's not for this platform, but also ensuring that those careers that are going to be replaced by IA and that consolidation of power and wealth for large companies like Google or whoever it is, like how do we maintain our workforce and keep jobs in the public and private sector? So can people continue to be employed, continue to learn? I look at myself as a federal employee and I could be replaced by AI in a couple years. That's just one example. So protecting our national security, our economy, personal information. I could probably be replaced now.
I was trying to keep things optimistic. Do you guys want to answer that?
I have an optimistic answer. I don't think people need to be concerned in the long term about unemployment. I think if we look at, like, people had the same concerns when the internet was coming out, that Why would I need why would I need to hire somebody when I can just send an email? It did actually kill jobs for a few years. Between 2 to 5 years, it killed jobs. But the amount of jobs it created after that were so much more. I really believe that's what we're going to see with AI. There are going to be struggles in the next 2 to 5 years, but after that, the amount of wealth creation, the amount of innovation, the amount of jobs available will explode.
All right, Dr. Bush, with that.
I'll
I'm sorry,
just
go ahead.
add, try to be not dystopian, but very, optimistic. You're right. Every time you put more information into the hands of more of the world actually benefits. I mean, we have seen an explosion of economic activity ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, such that poverty is very rare, and it's only in certain situations. Well, if we're giving more information out there, because that's what's going to happen with AI, more information is going to get there. Imagine releasing the potential of all these people who did not have access to that information before. I mean, the world's just going to flourish. It's going to be a great place to live. It really will be. I mean, every time it's happened. And every time you start pushing down on it, it recedes. So give the information out there, get it out there, distribute, make it happen.
Mike?
No, I think you guys got it, and that's certainly a rational fear, that our jobs are going to be replaced. But just the examples we have throughout history. I mean, I think the Industrial Revolution, right? The internet, it was mentioned, was a good one. Like, people need to adapt and overcome, and there's always going to be, somebody's going to have to lead the AI and tell the AI what to do and harness it in the right way, right? So, Will entry-level programmer jobs exist like they do today in 5 years? Like, they probably won't exist. But what other jobs will exist that we're not even thinking of based on the new productivity that everyone enjoys based on AI?
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Bush?
I was actually going to end this discussion by highlighting the fact that the conversation took such a positive spin on a topic that often is doom and gloom. So, wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking the panel.